we're essentially going to do, last year when we had PTI, and we had it in Dumas as well, we got done with the meeting, and I had some customers that came up to me and asked me if any of our products were relatable to cotton, if you could use any of our products in cotton. I thought, ooh, we missed the mark there because we obviously can use all of our products in cotton, and it works very well in cotton in different scenarios for different reasons. And I thought this year, we might want to localize it and get you guys some better information, more specific to, the crops that we're growing down here, because we are not just a soybean and corn company. We do service multiple other crops. So with that, we do have a couple dealers and growers up on the board. And what we'll do is I'll just have you guys go through and mention what dealership you're from. And then if you are farming, your practices, where you're from, what you're farming with, and we'll go from there. So kind of a profiling information, but go ahead, Hans.
So Hans Jensen with Planterology from Delhart.
Bobby Bird, I'm a farmer in Hale County up near Plainview, Texas.
Mark Howard, H4H Farms. We farm in the southern part of Hartley County.
Clint Tharp, H Farms.
And I'm Kevin Williams with Ag Ingenuity in Sunray.
Okay. And are you guys, I'm just trying to pull you guys for the rest of the room, but are you mostly dry land or some irrigated, some strip till? What are your actual practices?
Mostly irrigated, and pretty much none of the dry land came up this year, but so mostly irrigated. And I do limited kind of no-till, minimum till, and a little bit of regular conventional tillage.
Okay.
Cotton into corn stubble, cotton into wheat stubble kind of stuff.
Okay.
We're corn and cotton growers, 15-inch rows. And I guess that pretty well sums it up.
Same thing, huh? Okay. So we'll start with the dealers. What's the most common and overlooked maintenance item that you find on cotton planters? Everything. So I'm going to probe you and say what in specific.
Well, in specific, especially in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years of research and field boots on the ground, definitely a downforce system on the planters, mostly either spring or single spring or really nothing, or uncontrolled airbag. So definitely say downforce systems.
Do you feel like they're not set correctly, or are they going to the field and they think they're planting at a specific down, they think they're planting at 2 inches and they're not, or what's the in-field result that you guys see?
Well, from my experience of like 18 years, I've never figured out where the correct setting is, because it's a ballpark to begin with. The full boxes, it's set somewhere, and half empty, it's set somewhere else, and airbags the same way. It's a constant air in and out. And I'm not saying that you can't do an excellent job, because I've seen some pretty fabulous jobs done, but it takes a lot of watching and self-adjusting. It's definitely not been something that's automated until recently.
Okay, good. You want to pass it down?
You want the dealer, or you want
Dealers, yeah.
So before we start looking at the mechanical issues, we need to back up and ask the question is, what is at stake? In corn, we got a good round of numbers that specify in regards to, okay, if that plant comes out late, it's going to cost us X. If there's a skip, it's going to cost us Y and such. So in cotton, the historical philosophy of been around it is those plants adapt. If you've got a plant missing, the other one's going to make itself larger. So we sat down, got some interns together, we went out and we started harvesting plants by hand and documenting every variable we can come up with on that. And as we started working our way down through there, we're finding that yes, the plants where there is no plant to its left is larger, but when we start dividing it by the square area that it was occupying, we start dropping yield off extremely quickly. And so as we started looking things through, spacing errors cost us the least, which was the same we've seen in corn. We get in, multiples cost us a little bit more. From what we were seeing, multiple is going to cost you about 7% of your yield potential. And when you get into a skip, you're going to lose about 22% of your yield potential over what's possible. And that's if all the plants came up at the same time. If you have plants that are coming up and say they're 20% shorter in stature than the tallest ones, you've lost 18% of those other numbers. You just slid that entire scale down by 18%. And if you lose 40% of your height, so if that plant's that much shorter, we've lost another 38% of those other numbers, slid that entire scale down. So not the same numbers as corn, maybe not quite as bad as corn, but they're still there. But the problem is the lint's worth a whole lot more than corn is. Mm-hmm. So economically, we got a lot more at stake here.
And I think the struggle in general, I mean, in the cotton industry, is there's not as much data, obviously, right? Because up until now, you know, having your yield spatially accurate in a field, in a cotton field, I mean, it's you just don't have it like you do in corn. So Hans, this past year and the next couple of years, we'll be doing more data research, but it is the hand harvesting and truly trying to figure out what is the yield response when you have these specific errors that we know affect corn, but also affect cotton. And I think growers just don't realize or don't know yet what the actual effect, you know, will be at the end of the year. So we'll stay tuned for all your back-breaking hand harvesting for the next few years. Okay, so for the growers inside of cotton, mechanically speaking, in reference to the planter, what are the biggest challenges that you run into?
So I guess my question is, how many farmers are still out here? Is most of y'all farmers? Pretty much. So I'm going to speak from a farmer's perspective. And I'm looking at a planter that's a 1720, that's about a 2005 model. And I'm thinking to myself, what can I do to this planter to make it plant better or maybe more like a new one? And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, you know, I've got to replace all these chains. It had 3 transmissions on it. It had all the shafts and all the bearings. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I could take all that stuff off and replace it with something that might be better. And I come up here with my dealer last year, and I've seen Stacy's program before several years ago. And my thought was, this is what I've been looking for. Is it possible that what they're telling us up here is true? And I don't have percentages or things like this, but I do have one good story for you. And my wife grew up in Houston, Texas, and she is from the city. And we moved out into the country, and when I plant corn, I plant 12 rows down the turn road, and I leave a little strip on the inside to put some sweet corn in. Last year, she called me and she said, I don't know what you did, but I can't get the 5-gallon bucket out of the field. So that to me tells the story that my placement of my seed has improved. And that was from a standard corn disc. Well, let's talk cotton for a minute. What I saw in cotton was I did see a consistency in my planting population and in my spacing. I saw a few skips. They were less readily available as they were in the past. The big difference I did see, though, is in my doubles. And I don't know if you've noticed what 2 cotton plants growing together look like. And it's usually you've got one that did kind of half a yield and the other one's just kind of a runt. But the skip episode, I don't know if that's a skip that's actually because it wasn't dropped, or was it because it didn't sprout? Cotton's a little different animal than corn is. My singulation looked really good when I planted it. I'm guessing it was probably a seed that didn't sprout correctly. But if you're looking for a better way to do things and an easier way to do things and the ability to look and be able to tell what you're doing behind you, this system will do it, and it's pretty simple. I'm not a great technology guy. This is a simple system that gives you visible results that you can see in the field on the tractor.
Sure. Yeah. And you have V-Drive, right?
I do.
You have V-Set.
I have V-Drive and also have Clean Sweep.
Okay.
Is what I put on this year.
Okay.
When you come to the mechanical side of things. Mechanical technology seems to me to be easier for a farmer to grasp. We have a problem. We're looking for a solution. First winter conference or summer conference I ever went to, I saw things that would fix my problems, and we started applying it. And then we start getting into things where you may not even know you have the problem, but they have the solution, and they come in, and you may figure out you have the problem or you don't. But it's easier for me to grasp the things that I know will address what I'm looking for. But what we've looked for 25 years in cotton is consistency. And the difference between your best fields and your worst fields, a lot of times is $600-700 an acre in gross income. Mm-hmm. And usually the bottom end of that's not on the profitable level. Was we've added Delta Force, and we've added VSET, we've added clean sweeps, and we're constantly trying to farm in trashier ground and still not give up the uniformity we need in a seed bed and get the uniformity we need in a stand. I think, in our opinion, these precision products are allowing us to do that. And we still have a pretty good size range between, the top and the bottom as far as gross income, but the bottom's moved up where it's profitable, and then the top end is really nice. So we haven't totally closed the range down like I want, but we've moved that range up, and it's a good move.
Mechanically speaking, we all know that planting cotton is very shallow, and it hurts everybody's feelings when you walk out in the field and you see seed laying on top of the ground. You get it set, you move to the next field, and you got a whole different set of problems. But it's a lot easier with, like Mark said, we have B drive and Delta Force, and a lot of it we overlooked was the wear in the parallel arms on the planter and the actually on the closing arms and bushings. Discovered Hans showed us how wore out we really were, and if you take a 1/4 inch of slack in an arm and that seed's only a 1/2 inch out of the ground, by the time it comes up that 1/4 inch, you've already got seed on top of the ground before your Delta Force can respond. So that's, am I close, Hans? Okay. So it's nice to be able to move from one field to the other and overcome the situation and the problems you have. And also go back and start out with a good planter to start with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the depth management is obviously extremely important in corn, and it's even more so important in cotton when you are trying to plant 3/4 of an inch deep. So like you say, when you have not calibrated your row units, like we talked about on the simulcast, it hurts that much more because you have that less, leeway to actually play with when you make a mistake. So
yes, absolutely. That's a big step too.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so over the last 5 years, what changes have you guys made to your planting operation in general, whether it's precision or anything else?
We paid more attention to the condition of the row units in the planter. Tried to plant a little sooner, a little earlier in the year. I'd say 3rd week in April. Try to get all the cotton in one day. It worked pretty good this year, actually. We had a good year. Every year we strive and we make different changes, and it's, most of it's with help from everyone, especially precision planting. We learn something.
Good. Okay.
Tell me the question again.
Over the last 5 years, what changes have you made to your planting operation?
Well, both of us have talked about all the things we've added. We buy technology all the time. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen from this technology is the day we learn to apply it instead of just buy it. Mm-hmm. And that comes from the dealer. Mm-hmm. When you look at a map and it's all kinds of pretty colors, and then you wonder, what do I do with that? And it didn't take Hans riding around with me 2 rounds, and he said, "Stop the planter. We got some adjusting to do." Mm-hmm. I had no idea based on that map that I needed to do anything. Mm-hmm. So made me a better purchaser of these products to have someone help me apply that knowledge.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that's happened in the last 5 years. The simplest thing is to calibrate the depth of those row units. To realize that a T-handle setting isn't the same across the whole deal, and you're trying to plant something 1/2 to 3/4 was huge. The last 2 years, we've had the best uniformity in our stands. We're planting 115,000. We're trying to get around 85 to 90 up. And when we can achieve that, I don't know that we know the upside limit of the yields.
Sure. And we'll leave it with you for a second. What product do you feel like has given you the largest ROI in your operation when it comes to planting in general?
The Delta Force was a big change.
Okay.
In the last 5 years, I've noticed that seed prices have continually increased. So as we do that, I think the tendency is to plant less seed and try to get more out of putting things in the right place at the right spacing. So when I think about these products that they're selling, this makes us more effective, or helps us be more effective at how we stick the seed in the ground and the spacing. I'm planting right at about 38,000 on 40 inches, 40-inch centers for cotton, and I was very, very satisfied. And that's probably the lowest irrigated value I might have planted in years that was irrigated. I usually try to go around 42,000, but anyway, like I said, I just bought the V drive and the clean sweep, so those things have been great for what I've seen. I'm interested to look at the Delta Force in the future. You don't realize what's going on back there if you don't have a way to either lay on the back of the planter and watch it, or have something that's measuring it. And it was amazing to me, even though I had pins on there that would tell me something was going on with my planter, it was telling me that I wasn't in the ground like I should be with my mechanical down pressure. So that will be the next step I would take in that. But as far as the greatest, I think, is we've got to get things, if we're going to cut our seeding rates, we've got to get things in the right place at the right depth to make that work right.
Sure. Yeah. Reduce your costs and your input costs in your seeding. So the next question is, why did you choose to invest in precision planting on your planter? So I will preface this with, talking to some of our dealers in the area and growers in some areas of the northern Texas Panhandle. There's a lot of cotton growers that had some of the best yields they've ever had. I've heard a lot of reports of 4.5 bale cotton. So if you're that guy, and this year was one of the best years you've ever had, it always comes down to where could we have been, right? We had some great yields, but what could we have done? Could we have been higher, and could we produce more next year? So for those guys, for the guys that are already hitting what they think is their top limit, why, in your perception or viewpoint, why do you think that someone like that should invest in precision planting, and what made you, make the commitment to move to a product to control something else on your planter?
I think we all have fields that we go to that weren't planted optimally. Some of cotton planting is luck, and I would like to take some of the luck out of it by putting it in the right place and at the right spacing. Cotton and corn, and I guess most of y'all are cotton planting. Cotton and corn are two different animals as far as, I guess I don't think I've ever replanted corn, but I've replanted a lot of cotton, and that gets expensive. So when you ask me, well, if you had a good yield, why do you want to change? There's always those farms that I could have done better on planting, and payday starts pretty much when you put the seed in the ground. That affects the whole rest of the year, and if you've got a blank spot or a spot where that seed didn't come up, that's a missed opportunity. Yeah. So even on a good year, we always have things that we would like to do better. Maybe not on that field, but on another one.
Sure.
So,
Good.
We would like to plant, well, we're planting, our goal now is around 500 acres a day when we're planting cotton. And we'd like that to get better, higher. And when you're planting 500 or 600 acres a day, you're changing fields a lot of times, multiple times a day. We've got, it's so hard to keep everything the same. Then you get into different soil types. And we're just looking for all the automation we can get that helps that operator get to that field and do it right the first time, because that's the only time we have to get that cotton done right. And the automation that comes along with a lot of the precision stuff that you can see in the cab has gone a long ways toward helping us do that, and to help our operators to maximize what they do on a given day.
So to that comment, I mean, I think a lot of guys that I've talked to are, they have operators in the cab and they change throughout the season, and they're nervous that they're going to change settings, or you're going to tell them to do something, and the minute they get in, what do? They punch buttons and they change everything that, you've told them not to do, or they speed up and they're going faster than you would like. Do you feel like it was a high learning curve for your operators? I mean, what was their experience like when you first put some of the systems in their cab? You can be honest.
Yeah, I'm still one of the operators, and it's still a high learning curve. And just learning to trust the equipment what it's telling you is actually happening out there. And as Clint mentioned, when you're planting so shallow and you're, you have to live with a little bit of that, but as much as the seed cost, you hate to waste it. And we want to try to get to the point where we're all striving for perfection. And as we get there, it's forgot where I was going, guys. Sorry about that. I had something I was going to say about that. That gone it? It's gone.
We'll be here a few more minutes. When it comes back, we'll just give it back to you.
I can expound on what Mark said about his operator. I don't run a planter much anymore. I just kind of fill in from time to time. And last April, granddaughter or your grandniece birthday party. So I thought, here's my chance to run a planter again. So I was on a field, planted the whole thing. It's pretty mellow, perfect conditions. Get out and look, everything's great. I'm feeling like some kind of hero. Move to the next field, and I cannot get the seed in the ground. It's cloddy, it's dry. We've got all these tools at our disposal. What do? And so call Mark, he'd come out, we set things. Neither one of us felt comfortable because we've never planted with that much downforce, or we never planted that much depth setting or that shallow depth setting. Everything we changed was out of our comfort zone, but and it does help. I mean, it does help to expand your horizons and believe what you're seeing.
Yeah.
With the help of a dealer, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I would totally agree that I am fully convinced after 6 years that the dealers play a big role in the comfortability, especially when it comes to technology. If you don't have a good dealer to support you, I mean, you're going to struggle when you go to the field. So did you have something you want to mention on?
So if we're already hitting 4 and 5 bale cotton, it's like, what is the potential? Let's flip the scale over to corn. We saw some 347 bushel corn on the west end of Hartley County this year. And when we're seeing that kind of stuff in some of these hybrid plots, it's like, what is the potential? Because the grower certain wasn't pushing for much more than about 260 and pulled that off. So there's always the potential there, but when are we going to allow good to settle in and become the enemy and prevent us from becoming great? Never give up, keep looking, do it profitably, but always keep experimenting on the side and see, okay, what can we do? As I said earlier, so if you don't change something, you ain't going to get a different result. You got to keep looking. You got to keep experimenting with that.
Yeah. So the last question we have, and then we'll open it up to the room, is what is the next area of improvement that you plan to make on your planter?
I'd like to add the downforce, the delta force. I didn't realize how much hopping my row units were doing before I got the system. And like I said, I have the pin in there that lets me know what's going on. I just don't have the down pressure system. So it's a little shocking to see a lot of red stuff on the screen while you're planting. When you see red on a metric on the screen, that's a bad sign. So I'll add one more thing, and this is a little bit off of what you said, but I was always told planting corn 4.5 miles an hour. And you could see a little difference in row units, I think, on the seed sensors that I got with my planter. But to see it as you're going and see the skips and stuff when you speed up and go too fast, it's a constant reminder that there is a sweet spot in everything. And to be able to see where that sweet spot is on the go is invaluable. It helps me. I get a lot of anxiety on the planter. I sit on the edge of the seat like this because y'all know how it is when you get in the field. And to be able to see that and rest a little bit when you learn to trust what you're seeing, it may help you sleep a little better at night.
I remembered what I was going to say. The clean sweep, we run two 48-row rigs, 47-row rigs. And there's so many times when I knew at one end of the field was different than the other end of the field, much less going from field to field. But that infield change and not wanting to get out and change to make any time to get anything done, you can't jump out there and change your whole system by hand that fast. So when we started seeing what clean sweep would do, how it enabled us to get more acres per day, to make, at the end of the day, you weren't exhausted, and you just felt good when you weren't on it and somebody else was. That was a big deal. But all of the automation, it comes with all the issues of it's not a simple planter anymore. You've got all kinds of wire and harnesses and troubleshooting, but it's just a learning curve that you need to get comfortable with and work with it. It can be done, will be done. And I'm pretty intrigued with the furrow force right now. I've seen that problem on us with as much trash as we have and boulders and otherwise called clods and things, but we had some nasty situations and we need to be able to change our closing systems faster than what we can do manually.
I also am very interested in the furrow force. Everybody knows, what the video we watched says you change a different wheel every year, and it works great for that year, but it's not ideal for the next year. So that's very interesting. That'll be the question was, what would you like to change on your planter? And that's my biggest interest right there.
Yep. Yeah. I think a lot of guys, and what Caleb and I have definitely realized it over the last few years, is that closing is a big issue, and I realized it a lot more this past year because Hans actually had, 6 or 8 row planter, and we went out to a cotton field and he had 8 different closing systems set up, and he said, okay, well, we're going to pull forward and you tell me which row we're going to choose and change out the rest of the closing systems too. And you get back there and it's, no till, there's trash everywhere, and you think it's row 4, but then you walk forward 10 feet and row 4 doesn't look it anymore. And now you think it's row 6. And I never fully realized until I went out on this plot planner how difficult it is to truly set your closing system correctly. Because the minute you pull forward and the variables change, it's all out the window, right? I mean, if you move into a wetter area of the field versus, an area that's more dry, whatever it may be, I mean, the variables change and it's very difficult. So, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to speak to some of your results that you had on closing, but
Yeah, we drug that planter across 31 different fields across Dahlem and Hartley County this last season. And there were 6 primary closing systems. We played around with 1 or 2 others, but the results were frustrating because you go from full tillage in corn, you get one number, full tillage in cotton, a different one. You go to strip till in corn, you get a different one. You go to no till, you get a different one. And it's all over the board. And so it's going to be very interesting to be able to get some sort of a level of automation into that. Speaking back off of your comment earlier in regards to kind of that sweet spot, another fascinating thing to come in is, some guys run 4.5, sometimes run 5. We got to be very careful and think through the variables going in. We was dragging this planter with about every bell and whistle that's out there. I'm going 3.7 and I'm going too fast because this particular farmer went in and did the wrong type of tillage at the wrong soil moisture and left a miserable mess of a seed bed. So these are tools in the toolbox, but you still have to end up paying attention to the rest of the system and look through all those other issues of how are we going to manage trash? How are we going to manage tillage? And there's no magic bullet. It's everything compounded upon everything else of how do we get to the end goal of where a given operation is trying to achieve, and what are the tools and the thought processes in order to achieve the end goal, and what may have to change. And we'll probably have to learn something new in order to reach that. But therein's the joy of life. We get to keep learning.
Yeah. Keep doing plots. All right. So we'll open it up to the room. Does anyone in here have any questions on anything directly related to cotton or corn or product or anything for that matter? The question was, did you change your population in dryland cotton?
Yes, I drop it pretty dramatically on dry land. So it's around 20. Yep. Didn't come up at all. In fact, we didn't get any rain, so I plowed it up or turned it in insurance and plowed it up. So 0 dry land this year.
You don't have any dryland, yeah. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Are any of y'all run any type of pop-up fertilizer? There's not a whole lot of test results on 1034.
We don't. No. We did it for 25 years and got into the acres per day, and the inconsistent results on some of those charts I experienced. I think we probably better look at it again. I think things have changed somewhat in the genetics, and we got to be open to the new things. Yes, my brother's sitting back there wondering, did he really say that?
Something to keep in mind when we start looking at starter fertilizers is, especially in phosphorus, of what is the soil temperature that we're planting into. If we're going into 60, 65 degree soil temps with cotton, your microbes are up and rolling, and they're making the phos that's in the soil available to that plant. The other thing is, when we look at response of starter fertilizer, the stronger or I should say, the more phosphorus you have in the soil, the less response you're going to see from it, compounded with warmer soils. So as we're starting to push some of these cotton, where we're planting cotton before corn now in some cases, and we're pushing that 50 degree soil temp, we've got 15 degrees there before the microbes get up and rolling. And so we once again have an opportunity, is maybe there is an opportunity in that, but once again, what's it costing us in lost yield by not getting that cotton out of the ground as quickly as possible? So there's a lot of different variables there, but there's room for opportunity. Is there a gain? And what's the profitability? Will it pay for an additional planter to allow us to do it? We'll find out.